Speaking of flights, basically what I'm trying to teach you today is give you some tools for how to find the least expensive airfare. I probably should change that from cheap. Cheap can imply the wrong thing because there's more to a flight than its cost. There's reliability, there's the length of the flight, that kind of thing. But you can find those flights. Flexibility is the number one thing I say. That's the key. When you have fixed dates that you have to travel somewhere, you are not flexible. Nothing the matter with it, but that means you're going to have to take the flights that you get. If you've got wide open travel plans, you'll find the cheapest flights. That's because airfare is not the same every day of the week. And there is no rule of thumb that can cover that. For example, some destinations are cheaper on weekends. Some are more expensive on weekends. Some are cheaper on Friday and Saturday. Some are more expensive on Friday and Saturday. As a rule of thumb, in general, I can say that the cheaper flights are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's almost always the case. Not always, but that's a pretty good rule of thumb that you'll find. So for years, I did a lot of my most expensive flying, which happened to be overseas. I always flew out on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, came back on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if I could. But I always compare the whole itinerary, see what the cheapest option is. So it's an example, it's cheaper to fly midweek, but those fares are going to vary from day to day. Fares also vary a lot about depending on how far out that flight is. There's a point when an airline posts a flight sometime off in the future, and they fix a price. They generally fix them a bit higher early on when they're months away. And that makes sense. They're thinking if you're going to book that flight, then if you want it so badly that you're going to book it early, you're going to pay. And as it gets closer to the actual date of the flight prices drop, and they stay down there and they fluctuate. And then they generally start to rise a certain amount of time before the flight. On international flights, they tend to rise probably about 2 to 3 months out. On domestic flights, they tend to rise 6 to 8 weeks. But those are old rule of thumbs. And right now, almost anything goes. Why do I say that? Because the airfare industry was thrown into a tremendous disruption last year, and they're still disrupted. They're disrupted because we were just discussing at the beginning, Fred and I, about the fact that flights are being canceled because they can't put together a crew. Why? Because people are testing positive for Omicron, and they have to quarantine. Many airlines have taken vaccination seriously. United, I'm actually flying day after tomorrow to Mexico with United. I didn't necessarily choose United for this reason, but I'm happy that they did choose as an airline to require vaccinations of all employees early on, and they had a very high rate of compliance. However, you can still get a breakthrough case, and I think in the airline industry they've had a lot of breakthrough cases, and they're required to quarantine for 10 days. Okay, there are 4 main ways to find cheap flights. You can sign up for a notification service like Scott's Cheap Flights. There are some others. I think Cheapo Air does this. Skyscanner might do it. If you put in certain things, they'll tell you. Scott's Cheap Flight is much, much more comprehensive than any of those. It's really become my go-to way to find affordable airfare, and I'll actually go out and show you Scott's Cheap Flights. They are a paid members service, $49 a year. There is a free version. You can find a little bit of stuff that's free. Number 2 way after a notification site is the airline websites. Very good way to learn. You won't beat the price. The airline, you rarely can get less than the airline's price somewhere else. Sometimes they do give booking agencies a discount. That's rare. You can get it, but generally you can go to airline websites, get good information. Then you can go to the flight, what I call flight aggregators, search engines, OTAs, online travel agencies, Orbitz, Priceline, Expedia. Those are online travel agencies. That means you can actually book the flight through them. You booked it through Priceline, booked it through Orbitz, booked it through Expedia. Expedia owns Orbitz. So if you notice that they have the exact same information, that's probably why. I find Google Flights is the easiest to navigate of all the search engines. It's fast. You can get your notifications by email. It's quite intuitive and easy to use. And it takes you directly to, once you pick your itinerary, your flights, your tickets, it will take you usually to the airline website to book. And what I like is it doesn't take you to the front door. It gets you through the front door into the back, to the point where you're ready to buy your ticket. So it's got all your reservation. Very, very handy. I use that to book my flights to Italy. The easiest one to use on a mobile device is Hopper, and I do a whole class on Hopper and a whole class on Google Flights. So if you learned something today, look for those classes in the future. Hopper and Google Flights give you notifications. Hopper gives you the most notifications. It's on your phone. When a price drops or is about to jump up, Hopper lets you know right away on your phone. So you can act fast. I've used it to my advantage in the past to get some good flights. Hopper found a flight that had just dropped way down in price for me. I saw it, went online, looked at it, said, I'm not going to do better than that, and booked it. Wouldn't have known it other ways. Grace asks, does Google Flights include all airlines? I've noticed that it sometimes doesn't include the budget airlines. Excellent question. And one thing I'll tell you about here, we'll get to it. We're not there yet, but we will get to it. Some of them don't share their information. So you won't find Southwest there at all. So for domestic flights, I can recommend Southwest. They're perennially one of the best airlines to fly with. Their flights are pretty easy and straightforward. They don't charge you to check a bag. I don't think they charge you to carry on. They don't play games. They charge you per leg of your trip. And they're very good to work with. So, but you won't find their information on Google. So if you're thinking of looking for a domestic flight or even to Puerto Rico or Mexico, look and you just check and see what Southwest has. The one thing about Southwest, they tend to be cheaper out of the secondary markets. So for example, Washington Dulles just has one gate for Southwest flights, but there's multiple gates at both DC National and at Baltimore, Washington, I think. Chicago O'Hare won't have Southwest, but Chicago Midway is might even be a hub for Southwest. So they tend to pick what they call a secondary market, slightly smaller airlines, smaller airfields. I can recommend them. You can find Frontier, you can find Alaska Air on Google Flights. I'll give you a list of some newer airlines to check out that I have not seen necessarily on Google Flights. So as we come up, I'll give you some more information. OTAs, online travel agencies, for example, Orbitz, Expedia, Travelocity, Priceline. You can book your flight through them. You can often get a hotel. And then get a hotel and a flight. That's a bundle. You can get a car through them. You can book cruises through them. You can often bundle this stuff together. But read the fine print. When you book a flight through Priceline or wherever, you want to make sure that your flight information gets directly to the airline. If you've got frequent flyer miles with one of the other airlines, make sure that information is there, because if that isn't there, you won't get,